What's going on, good people of the internet? It's time for OnComicsGrounds.com's flagship podcast, panel to panel, where a bunch of folks shoot the breeze and talk about comic books and such. We are back once again. Unfortunately, the entire Trinity is not here this evening. I am once again talking to an amazing creator, trying to get into the heart of what we do here is talk about comic books. And I am joined by literally someone I have been a fan of for a long time. And after having her on the previous installments of Panel to Panel and now bringing back with the reboot, it is nice to help her out when talk about her brand new Kickstarter. We have Comic Uno. I forget how to pronounce your last name. Help me out, please.
Calamia. It's kind of a harder one. So understandable. Yeah.
But no, thank you for coming here this evening. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of the site. I'm a big fan of the podcast as well. So it's awesome. Thank you for having me.
Wow, I actually didn't think you actually listened to the podcast. That's awesome that you still listen.
Yeah, of course. I try to with my time to really see the whole landscape of comics, and again, your site for what you guys cover is awesome. I feel like not enough sites just cover comic book reviews anymore either. So, and you guys cover a whole wide section of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's like the adaptability of most websites to go into everything nerd media has been interesting to watch over time. And trying to balance, especially how this year has been. You have places covering WWE news because they don't know what else to do because comics have sort of been on a standstill this year.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Definitely understandable why other sites do it, and you gotta. But it's nice to also just see indie books and all comics.
Yeah, definitely. And to see where you've gone, we were just talking about off mic about how you've gone from being just a YouTuber to then moving into doing your own comics to then even being a writer at multiple different websites and then continuing your series and your YouTube work. What has that been like for you?
Oh, the balance has been fun. I think over the years it was hard to find the balance. It was hard to okay, so many projects, how do you streamline it? And I feel like I've really found some good ground on that in the most year or two. And currently, yeah, I work for Newsarama. That's kind of my main work, and I also freelance for DC Universe, DC Comics, DC Universe. And yeah, still do the YouTube channel, which is awesome. I love how that's been able to kind of grow and be different. I used to do, which I'm sure you remember, I used to do individual reviews, single issue reviews, and then the show, and that was ridiculous and so much. So now just doing best comics of the week, which I do every Wednesday, ranking comics. It gives me the opportunity to talk about what I love and to critique comics, but in a more streamlined way and a more time managed way and in a more even professional way. I'm able to edit it a little bit better. So I have that. I try to throw in as many videos as I can, at least 2 a week. And the comic writing, right? And that's what we're here for. I also write comics, Follow My Daughter being the main series. They Call Her a Dancer, I write as well, which is a mini series that we're pitching around. So it's actually been done for a while, but it's in the process of waiting for hopefully we get that soon. And yeah, been busy and keep on writing, and I'm happy to be busy.
That's amazing. And it's you've always had this iconic, you turn on the camera way about your YouTubing. And you've always been honest about your reviews. There was even a point where you would do a review video for every issue, every book of a series, and would stick with it. And to now see where you've gone is just amazing for what you've been doing.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the kind words, and definitely just following all that. It's an interesting balance, as I said, being a critic and a writer, and just trying to be as authentic as you can be, and just showcasing the love of comics. And I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people say like, "Oh, I'm so happy about it too." When people watch my videos, they say you're so positive, and obviously it doesn't mean like I only give positive reviews. I think it just shows how you can critique, and you might not like something but still be positive about it. You don't
Most
have to
deaf.
rag on it, and you could like actually critique on something and say, for me personally, I didn't like this, or this didn't work for me. That's still in a quote unquote way positive. But I think that's kind of the difference of some reviewers we've been seeing. Just like you see a lot of ragging and social media and all
Hmm.
that. And I think I hope that more people can just understand that there's a human being on the other side, but also be honest with what you've read.
Most definitely. And it's like you've actually been doing this for so long that you kind of were the first generation of comic reviewers that was there. And to be a woman doing that back then and to see where you've gone now, it's like you kind of have fought against the stigma of like women in comics and trying to like fight back against the neckbeards. And how has that been for you dealing with that over the years?
It's been, thankfully, I haven't had a lot of people at all, maybe just because of the way I showcase my knowledge, ever say, like, well, you're a girl, you're a fake fan, or whatever. So I've been lucky in that regard, because I've definitely seen it to other people where they're like, oh, you're a fake fan, like, you just, new girls don't like comics. And yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, the difference is, I don't really remember a time where I'm on a chat or interview or whatever where there's another girl. So I think that's grown, which is nice. Like there's definitely been more girls on the podcast. But yeah, maybe
Hmm.
5 years ago, definitely only be the only girl. Um, and I hope that changes. I hope we get to see more female voices, not just in creating, because I think we've definitely seen more, which is great, but
Yeah.
critiquing as well. I would definitely like to see it
I was about to
more.
say one of the best things that's been about the reboot of Panel to Panel was the fact of finding someone like Mary, who has been just this amazing historian, like in comic books for years upon years upon years. She started with her dad showing her so many amazing books, and to then like be looking up to you when I was younger, like seeing you do this stuff and not be afraid to show your voice. And I have to commend you for that alone was amazing. And now moving into your writing, what made you come up with like Father Like Daughter? That like even back then trying to do indie books, what made you do that?
I will say it was very different back then, just 5 years ago. So I started with 5 years ago, I wrote a screenplay in college, and I said, "Hey, I wanna make this into a comic. It's what I love. It's what I wanna do," and I had the opportunity to do it. And I've learned a lot in the 5 years, since doing it, and now we're 7 issues in and able to publish more than we were. Now we're in a spot where we could publish 3 to 4 comics a year, which is amazing for indie comic. But what I've
Yeah.
definitely seen a difference of is like how Kickstarter has been, because now we're seeing voices from Scott Snyder to Boom Studios using Kickstarter. So there's just this bigger audience there. There's more eyes there, and I would say people see it more as a legit platform. Not saying it wasn't legit before, but now people are like, "Oh, this could
They see
actually
it as
be
a
a good
viable
comic."
option for them.
Exactly. They see it as like an online store in some ways, a pre-order store. Before I think it was more like, this they're doing their little thing, they're trying to make their comic. But now they're like, no, you can make a business. They're as viable creators as anyone in the direct market. And I think that's changed honestly mostly this year.
Yeah, definitely. Like even beforehand, you saw the rise of Kickstarter being more accepted, and for you coming up with this story, and it feels every issue that I've read over the years, you've put just your entire heart and soul into it. Almost like you're giving Casey this amazing like heart behind her. And what was it like creating these characters as like the time went on?
Well, also thank you for noticing that. I definitely try my hardest to make every issue as good as it can be, and this product has changed a lot over the years to do so. I would definitely say that the comic has changed, and I hope as people read it, issue one was made 5 years ago. It looks a
Yeah.
lot different than issue six or issue seven that we're releasing, and now issue eight that we're getting ready for. And
Ooh.
yeah, yeah, issue eight's huge. I could definitely give some teasers about that. Uh, but yeah, creating Casey, I think I don't know if her voice has changed so much. I think her direction's always been the same. But I will say something that happens in issue 8 wasn't gonna originally happen. There was a
Oh, okay.
concrete moment that happens in the issue that did happen in the screenplay. So this was like 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
obviously as time goes on, I was rewriting it because you had time and your writing changes and your ideas change. So I was writing, and I was giving Jessica, the mom, a bit more of a voice because in the original versions of it, I feel like we just get the reveal that she's a villain, and that's kind of about it. We didn't really get a lot of time to breathe. So in issue
Yeah.
six, I made the whole issue about her. I made it about like why she did it. That wasn't originally there. That was originally, I think, a Casey issue, and I moved that to issue seven. But anyways, yeah, issue eight, the one of the big moments that happened originally always was there, and I was kind of struggling with the ending of the issue. So that happens in the middle of the issue, and the ending of the issue, I was talking to one of my friends, who's one of the few people that knows what happens, and I was like, yeah, I don't know what to really do, and he's like, why not make Casey do this? I'm like, what? Like, yeah, let Casey do that. It's like people, what? And then I thought about it. I'm like, I can't do that. And like 5 minutes later, I called him. I'm like, I'm gonna do that. And so like Casey's journey definitely changes a lot in issue eight. I mean, it was already gonna change, but I think her voice hasn't changed, but I guess I found her voice a little bit more. I would say Stephanie, the friend's voice has changed a bit as I grew as a writer and kind of started to understand her. I guess same thing for Wes, her other friend. And like I said, I added more of a voice for Jessica with the mom, which has been really nice. And then
Yeah.
Invulnerable, I would say, is the one who's changed the least, which is kind of fun. He's changed the least, but he's also the one that anytime I get people like react to the book, they always say Invulnerable is their favorite, and I never guessed that.
That's
I'm like,
interesting.
right? He's the deadbeat dad, and everyone's like, "Yeah, I could just relate to him." I'm like, "Man, that's awesome." I didn't write that. I mean, I don't write any characters be like, "Oh, I hope this is their favorite." But I mean, Casey's the main character, and
Yeah.
I feel like everyone picks everyone except Casey.
See,
They're like,
what's
"Yeah, let's
ironic is I was going to say Casey is probably my favorite character, which is hilarious because she has to because like my father wasn't always in my life when I was younger, and to the ability to idolize your father as somebody that was like that big and that heroic, but still hate him for never being in your life, that was my struggle. So to see this put on a page and be so relatable, because Casey goes through that, and to find yourself being so much like your father in a big way like that blew me away.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad that you were able to connect to it, and I'm glad it was realistic enough. And yeah, that was it. It's kind of the moment of what happens when you become your own worst enemy, and you
Yeah.
you have these powers that remind you of the very reason your dad left. And as the story goes on, it gets more complicated. And in issue six, we actually learn it was Jessica's fault the whole entire time,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I'm happy to hear you like Casey. And I think that's something I like, that everyone has a different favorite character, because it shows, and hopefully it shows that everyone's three dimensional and no one's two
Yeah.
dimensional. Because I feel like if only one character had dimensions, they would always pick, oh, I only like Invulnerable. But it seems like everyone has their own favorite. And now I know someone likes Casey. They're in the Casey fan club.
I just like the idea that you took it. Like, it was funny because I was explaining to a friend of mine the pitch of the book earlier today, and she referenced Stargirl because of how Stargirl has been so much in the prominence of media recently because of the TV show, and I was like, wow, you're almost there, but like the TV show changes a lot of Courtney's stuff. So, like, no, but like this is still a really good story, and you tell it from a perspective where there's so much good things here. And I think unintentionally, there's like a little bit of NBC's Heroes in it, Like,
Oh, probably, right? 'Cause I love my heroes, so there's
yes.
gotta be a little heroes in
It was
there.
so good back in the day, and
It was.
it feels as if like Casey has a little bit of Claire in her.
Oh, for sure.
That same kind of like hatred of your father for like, for being who he is, but you still care about him at the end of the day because there's that amazing shot in the like in the issue where she like flies down when he gets shot, not understanding what's going on. And I love that moment because it's like it was so instinctive. She did not give a crap. It was her blood, and I love that so much.
Yeah, that really changed our relationship a lot. Every issue I really try to give something, right? And I think in
Yeah,
indie comics you really need to. I mean, I think mainstream comics should too, because if you're spending your money,
yeah,
every issue should have something. But I think indie comics especially because they're not coming out every month. So you want them to be memorable. You want people to really want to pick up the next issue. So that was issue 4. That was the turning point. That's where Casey's like, okay, maybe my dad's not too bad. Maybe I can
yeah.
give him a chance. And as we see now, he gets kidnapped. So, is it too late for her to kind of say that? Is it too late for him? We're gonna have to find out. But yeah, the relationship is very complicated, and that's been really fun to write. And yeah, I've also enjoyed just how Invulnerable has grown, and him, even though he wasn't the one technically who said, "Oh, I decided to leave." It was Jessica who said, "Pick one," and he doesn't pick his daughter, so technically it's both their faults. But he never like tries to say, "Oh, well, it wasn't my fault. You don't understand." He always says, "I'm sorry." He knows it's his fault, and he's trying to redeem himself for it. How do you redeem yourself with something with such a big mistake?
Yeah, because it's like he chooses the greater like sacrifice of being for the people rather than like being there for Casey. And the most like recent thing that screams that for me was season 1 of Black Lightning in the first episode where
Mhm.
instead Jefferson chose to be a dad. And now all these years later, seeing how you kind of did it first before the TV show changed Jefferson's origin is so remarkable because you chose the other side of the coin. And just him as a character, Invulnerable sticks out to me because yeah, you're right, he doesn't change that much, but he still is this kind-hearted person that still cares about his family.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think that is what's so interesting about him, and what I really wanted to do with the thematics of making Jessica part of the KGB, because it really is the idea of, and this is definitely going to be the theme of this ending of this arc, is what's more important, your children or your country? What's more important, the individual or your community? Now, if you look at from an American point of view, we're very individualistic. We're very much about
Mhm.
the individual and our experience, but if you look at other countries, if you look at something like the Soviet Union or Russia, it is very much about the community of people. It really isn't about being an individual. It's about, well, how do I make my family succeed? How do I make my country succeed? And that's where Jessica's coming from. It's like, yeah, you might be my blood, Casey, and you see that she's struggling with it. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's still my daughter, but my country comes first. Like A is, someone who's in a government position, but then also coming from a non-American position. I find really interesting. The superheroes I always call as the American mythology. It's our Greek mythology is superheroes.
Of course.
So to see some genre which is very American from a different point of view has been really fun to kind of explore.
That's and I love that you as the conversation has gone on, you keep mentioning Jessica because she is going to be this big part of the future coming up and how she's gone through rewrites. What sticks out to me the most is the ending of issue 6, where she purposely doesn't tell her partner about Casey having powers, even though he knows from the old lady from the orphanage that she does have powers, and it makes me feel as if that Jessica still cares, even though she cares about her country. And I'm wondering, obviously, don't please don't spoil everything for
Yeah, yeah, of
for
course.
the listeners. But is there going to be more fleshing out of Jessica's character as time goes on?
Yes. I will say issue 8 is a big issue for her and Jim. Casey is very much in a reactionary position in issue 8, but it's very much about the actions of Jessica and Invulnerable in issue 8. So yeah, we're gonna get a lot more with Jessica. I will say after issue 8, we're gonna get a little bit of a pause from her, so she's not gonna be like in issue 9. But we are
Yeah,
gonna
fair
see
enough.
more of her, because, you don't wanna spoil something that's too great, like, you don't want Green Goblin in every issue. So,
Yeah.
it's the end of her arc here, but that doesn't mean it's the end of her full arc. There's still a lot to tell with Jessica, but I will say answers the question, what's more important, your country or your child? By issue 8, she'll have that. You'll have your answer.
All right, all right. And obviously I want to make sure that the one big thing that's been talked about lately is the ability of to also bring artists into the conversation. And like the art of the comic, it matters just as much as the writing. And what has it been like working with the same artist of Wayne Brown for so long with this series?
It's been so great. It's interesting because which I love. It's his baby as much as mine. I created it, and as issues gone on, he's really find connections to the characters. He's an Invulnerable fan. Let me tell you that. Um, he is a very big Invulnerable fan. But yeah, it's been nice, and some of the layouts that happened in this issue, he kind of changed what happened in the script was kind of cool because I want him to feel as much ownership as me, and he's like, I kind of see this action scene differently. Can I play with it? I have to add a page, but is that okay? I'm like, yeah, let's see what turns out of it. And it looked awesome and even more actiony. And I was like, yeah, no, this looks great. I'm glad you thought of this. And it's cool. He gives me like we really talk pretty much on a almost daily basis about the comic and where it's
Excellent.
going. And it's cool to have that connection more than just like, oh, well, here's the pages, and that he likes the book and likes working on the book, and definitely just seeing his art grow. And also we have a new colorist since issue 6, so seeing like how that changes the look of it. We have a new letterer, which is Brant Fowler, since issue 6, and they're both like my really good friends for like a decade. So it's kind of
Yeah.
cool to be working with your friends as well. Uh, so yeah, it's a great team. It's a family in a lot of ways.
I will say issue 6 sticks out to me like mainly because it does feel like you're starting to finally find the groove, and like the lettering looks like so much better. The colors are brighter and vibrant, and I love that. Like even the scenes where Invulnerable's in the cell, it shows that he is like while also being bright and colorful, there is that dark edge to it, and I love that so much.
Yeah, Lisa does a great job. So in issue 6, I actually worked for a previous publisher, and we're still good friends, and we're great with each other. But I had creative differences, not in a bad way, but like I had a different vision for like Father Like Daughter. So that's why you do see the big jump from issue 5 to issue 6, because issue
Yeah,
6 was the first issue that I completely self-published. So and issue 7's the same way. And like Father Like Daughter in general, I think is that one book because I do get the question, like, well, if Image took it over or whatever, like, not took it over, but if you were able to get it published from Image or these other places, would you? And I honestly would say no, which is
fair
crazy to
enough.
say. I know, like people were like, you're nuts, but like, no, I like that I have this creative control of, first of all, talking to my fan base, being able to grow the audience, and knowing it's all, I mean, not all me because I didn't draw all of it, but at least from the creative control standpoint, it's
Yeah,
all me. And not other books. Like I would love to put in the direct market, like I said, the dancer I'm pitching around as we speak. So it's not every book, but the like Folly Daughter is just special to me. And it's my first book. It's the book I always see is there's so much more story to tell.
of
It's
course.
very much an ongoing, so it's just kind of my baby. But yeah, I love that you're seeing it grow, and that's definitely what I want everyone to see. And I do think it's grown, and that's not even from just an art team perspective. I think my writing is very different from 5 years ago because I was 19 when I started this. I'm
Yeah,
26 now, so writing's going to change. I would hope I would grow as a writer, and even if the structure of the story is similar, again, like we changed Jessica a bit. There's a huge story coming up for Stephanie. I think Wes has changed a bit. So it's kind of cool just to see things develop. And in some regards, kind of why I like that this process kind of took longer than other books. Like I'm happy it kind of took this time because I don't think the product would be as good as it is if it didn't take this time.
fair enough. I'm gonna say like seeing how the story has so much room to develop, especially when like you've created this sort of pocket universe where Invulnerable and Casey the only superheroes in existence, and you have that ability to grow. And there's even that future image later on in the trade. I remember looking at where like you see Casey as a superhero and Wes and Stephanie as their partners, and there's so much you could do with this so many years down the line. And I kind of have to commend you for wanting to keep this as your baby, your thing, and not let anybody have any hands on it. And there's still so much, and like we were talking about earlier with Kickstarter, where you can have that control, you can do amazing things, and you've created an amazing fan base that wants to keep seeing this. I want to keep seeing this. So like that's actually really awesome that you want to keep this as your own.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, Kickstarter is growing so much. I'm glad that the campaign, this is the we're on day 17, I think, and this is the most backers we've had, and
Wow.
we're gearing to the most funded we've ever had. And we have 17 days left. I'm like blown away by the reception we've gotten, and this is coming from fans, from press, from industry people who have
Yeah.
supported this book, which is nuts and crazy. And yeah, it's phenomenal. And I couldn't, yeah, I couldn't believe this 5 years ago. No, no way. Like it's funny because like my first interview ever was Tom DeFalco. This is like
Wow.
6 or 7 years ago, and I'm a huge Spider Girl fan. And like ever since day one, he's supported like father like daughter. And I'm like, whoa. Like he's my favorite writer of all time. And it's kind of like surreal to kind of have those moments. And yeah, it's been a ride, and I'm excited to continue the ride. The next Kickstarter we have going on is with my friend Phil. Like it's funny because like we are friends in real life, like we didn't meet on the internet,
Yeah.
but somehow we both found. Well, he knew I liked comics, and he liked comics. He's like, want to be a comic writer. I'm like, oh, cool, and he like asked for advice, and like we knew each other for like 3 or 4 years before that, and he never really mentioned it. Like I knew he liked comics, but I didn't know he like wanted to be a comic writer. I'm like, oh, cool. Like he's like, yeah, how do you do it? And and I know him. He had such a drive, and like, oh, these are stuff you do. And like 2 months later, he's like, yeah, I found an artist. I did this and that. I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. And he has Haunting, which is already up to issue 2. He's been doing this for like a year and a half or so, and now we're doing a crossover book together, which has been so
Wow.
freaking surreal. And we're setting that up in March, and it's been kind of cool to see like how our characters have grown and how we've helped each other like grow as well. And that's kind of the next project we got going on, and that's like so surreal. Again, that moment where he's like, well, I want to make a comic, and then you see his characters grow, you see faces to those characters, and just like his community and audience growing. And now we're at a spot where like both our characters have grown enough where we can make a crossover. We're making a 40-page crossover book, which is
Wow.
like crazy, and we have such great art team already. And that's what's so exciting is like these endeavors that I never would have been able to do if I wasn't like on my own doing Kickstarter. Like if I was with another publisher, I wouldn't be able to do this.
You
So it's
wouldn't
kind of
have that
cool.
freedom.
Exactly. So that's been really cool where I just do whatever I want. I mean, you're gonna make mistakes, right?
Yeah,
Like along
definitely.
the way, because of that, you're gonna trip and fall sometimes. But I know you learn from that, and I like that I'm steering my own ship. It's so cool.
Yeah, and that ship has been going amazing. And even before the show, you said this Kickstarter has been a roller coaster, but it seems like you talking about the most funded, the most support you've ever had, and I like that's amazing for you. So like to
Yeah,
see you've come so far, and I have to congratulate you for that. That's amazing.
yeah. Thank you. It's so cool, and yeah, it all happens with hard work, and I can't say it's not because of my last Kickstarter. I've been vocal about this. Like we launched, we didn't really have early, like I maybe had early bird specials. I don't even remember if I did, and I didn't realize like how important the first 48 hours were. Like the thumbnail, it
Hmm.
was good, but it could have been even more grabbing. Like there were just like little things. Like the story wasn't up at on the top of the Kickstarter. It was like in the middle. I introduced a creative team first, and
Yeah.
these little tweaks that I learned from that Kickstarter, that my first Kickstarter doing it myself, went miles ahead with this Kickstarter. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna fix this. Now I know how to do this. And again, our last Kickstarter made 215 backers. We're up to like 220 something. and we're on day 17. It just shows like you have to make those quote unquote mistakes to learn and be even better. And even with this campaign, I hope for our crossover campaign and the next campaign after that, these things I've learned will help me grow even more. Because and I've said this a lot throughout doing like press for the comic. I think a lot of times people will say like, well, when you're an expert at something, you know everything. And I don't believe anyone's an expert in anything, because if once you say you're great at something and you know everything, that's when you know you're not, you know nothing.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep learning. And I think that's what's so fun about doing Kickstarter and about being a self-publisher, is that you just keep on learning. You're able to grow. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these creators, these bigger name creators, doing the same thing. Scott Snyder
Mm.
making his best jacket press, going through going to Kickstarter and doing that book. I love seeing creators. I know so many creators that are either gonna do Kickstarter or have been doing Kickstarter, and we're all kind of learning this new landscape together, which has been so cool.
That is so cool. Like, and what's crazy is a few years ago, we didn't even think indie books were possible back then. Like, you saw
Hmm.
Image still being big ever since the 90s. You saw Image being as big as it was. You saw like other different publishers trying to be that. But then I think the big turning point was when like Image finally started to do more things besides Walking Dead. You saw Valiant kick up its boots and start publishing again. And now you see Kickstarter being a viable option when DC and Marvel are kind of doing their own thing and not really caring what you do. Like, you can come in there as an indie writer or and still do your own stuff on the side. So it leaves people open to more options.
Yeah, you're not that exclusive writer anymore, which has been kind of cool. And I know Marvel and DC, they got a lot to figure out since, Diamond and the pandemic and all that.
Yeah.
They got a lot to figure out. But yeah, it is cool to kind of see, like, with Future State, no matter what you think about it, we're getting to see new writers and creators that we've never
Yeah.
seen before on these
That's been the
books,
greatest
which is
thing about
cool.
Future State.
100%. That's what I'm excited about. That's why, like, again, no matter what you think of, like, oh, it's fillerish, we don't need it, or oh, I'm not going to buy that. That's your decision. But for me, I'm going to at least buy a few of these books. A, because some of them interest me. And then B, like, look at all these new voices. That's what we've been
Yeah.
looking for. And I think indie comics and even Kickstarter has really helped that. We see Kickstarter books getting movie deals. Like, you have
Yeah.
Blackfish that's got a movie deal. Niobe, no, I think that's what it was called. There's so many Kickstarters itself getting movie and TV deals.
Yeah.
That is so big. That is
Even
so huge.
indie deals that are like from Image that are getting things like, you see Bitterroot, you see other books like
Hmm.
that that have seen prospects. Like, indie books entirely are seen as an option for people, especially if you don't see the diversity at Marvel and DC that you want. Because you and I have talked about before about how Marvel and DC weren't offering the diversity that we want to see, and now seeing there being the ability to see that elsewhere is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and from people who are from those diverse backgrounds, or not writing about their diverse backgrounds, that's cool too. But
Yeah.
yeah, just getting new voices, getting new type of characters have been so cool, and they're not all superhero books, and that's totally fine too. And in TV and movies, it's so, like, a lot of the things that gear them to want to make these things is IP. So a lot of these filmmakers and TV writers are actually going the comics so they could, like, birth
Yeah.
their baby and be like, oh, cool, you see this did well. You wanna option this for a movie. So I know some people are favorable of that, some people aren't. I think if you're a filmmaker and you want to get into comics, just know the medium. I definitely seen people where, like, oh, I'm just gonna make a comic, and they literally I literally have had people say, I'm gonna make a comic. I said, "Oh, cool. What's your favorite comic? What have you read?" He's like, "I've never read one." But oh, okay.
And like, you actually have the ability to say that you have read and known all these comic books. You can say that Spider Girl is one of your favorites. You've been covering comic books for like so many years now, and you gave your honest opinion on all these books. And like, hopefully all of that has had an effect on your writing style from reviewing. And obviously, like you said, you're not going to have all the knowledge in the world just because you read the books. So like, to bring the reading side of it and the critic side of it along with you while you've been creating your own work, that has to be phenomenal for you.
Oh, it is. It's funny because I did another interview and I forget how this came up, but I said that, sometimes when I finish, we're writing our crossover book, we're finally in our last draft, like one of our last drafts, and I said, oh man, I love this. And he said, okay, and my friend said, okay, but as a critic, how would you review this? And I
Ooh.
did. And I reviewed it, and I said, well, as a reader, I would like this or I wouldn't like this, but I know as a writer we need to do it. So it's also interesting as a critic, you're like, oh, well, this might be 2 pages of exposition, but as a writer, you kind of know you need those 2 pages of exposition.
Hmm.
So that's kind of fun, but also like terrifying because sometimes I think we're all too hard of ourselves on our own creations. So like when I'm writing something, I might be a little bit too hard on myself and be like, oh, well, this and that and that and that. You never shut your mind off on it. Yeah, I guess I like how my mind works in that regard. I think when I look at stories, I try to look at the thematics and characters, and in that regard, I think it helps me reverse engineer comics in some way, and that definitely helps as a writer.
Most
But
def.
it's different. It's definitely different. But it's definitely a helpful tool as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I hope like soon, like even just as a critic, I can have you back on the show because your opinions on
Please.
things have been amazing to hear over the years.
I would love that. This was so much fun. Thank you for reading the book. Thank you for all the support over the years. This was such a great conversation.
Of course, I think that like the first time I ever like saw a video of yours, it was when you started covering Young Justice, and to
Oh,
know,
nice.
like yeah, like and to know that you have come so far has just been amazing to me. So like I feel as if I'm just like praising you over and over again, but just like seeing this is just phenomenal, and knows that if I ever gave it a shot, or if anybody gave it a shot, they have like you to look to as inspiration to do this kind of.
Well, that means the world, honestly. It really does.
Excellent. Don't forget, folks, that you will be able to see Kat's link to her Kickstarter in the thumbnail. In the thumbnail, Jesus, in the description of this podcast. It will be on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora. Finally, after months of trying to get on Pandora, all these amazing places you can see literally every platform we are available on our Twitter for you to see at PTP_podcast. Please check out this amazing book from Kat on the Kickstarter link below, and you will get to see this amazing work that she has brought to you folks. All right. Is there anything else you want to pimp? Anything else you want to shout out before we get off for the evening?
You're good. Yeah, just a Kickstarter. Check me out. YouTube, Comic Uno. Do weekly reviews there. At Comic Uno, Twitter is probably the best place to find me.
All right, great. We will catch you folks next time right here at Panel 2 Panel. Peace out.